Hello and welcome to Sex, Psychics, and Psychedelics, Discovering Inner Liberation. My name is BananaJane Garnett. I'm a licensed psychotherapist, a lover of freedom, and a relentless explorer of the mind. Please come join me on my journey in hot pursuit of inner illumination and liberation. For more about me, you can find me at the BananaJane on Instagram. Now let's dive in. Suze Schwartz is the founder and CEO of Unplug Meditation, the world's first drop-in secular meditation studio. She is the creator of the Unplug meditation app and the author of Unplug, a simple guide to meditation for busy skeptics and modern soul seekers. Suze also is an old friend. We used to work in the same building together and ran into each other just as she was opening a studio that I was lucky enough to teach at, the groundbreaking Unplug studio. Welcome, Suze. I did want to just remember with you how long ago it was that we met, that we ran into each other in our building.
I think it was pretty much April 2014. You were walking outside of the studio, and I was just about to open Unplug. And I basically asked you to join.
That's right. I know. I think back to that moment. I'm like, this woman is psychic or crazy or has great instincts, or I don't know. But it was so lovely how forthcoming you were and how direct. You just said, come teach. And I was like, well, I haven't done the training. You're like, I'll train you. Come, let's go. And it was really great. I needed a bit of that. I needed someone to help me put some pep in my step at the time. And it's been...
And look at you now. You became so popular. We still have this. We should record more videos with you next time because I don't know if you're still teaching meditation, but your videos do well.
Oh, that's good to know. Yeah, I'd be up for that. I'm not teaching meditation, but I'm exploring all things mind, body, and soul related. I'm going on a kind of a wider healing kind of rampage. I mean, my sort of story in brief since we met was that, I've continued as a therapist and I've studied different forms. I've been doing EMDR and more kind of deep trauma-based healing. And I guess naturally my work's become more sort of like energy related through the adventures into meditation, adventures into psychedelics, adventures into sexual healing, just kind of going broader and broader with these kind of adventures into healing, and realizing that the traditional therapy model isn't enough for me. And it's not, I'm struggling with it in general, as I think about the mental health crisis that we're in. And I'm excited about all the potential solutions for healing. And, I think we've got to get our shit together fast. So I feel like increasingly kind of on a mission about all of this stuff. And I would love to hear your perspective on, what's worked for you and what hasn't, and what's working for people and what are the challenges in terms of, opening up and healing ourselves.
Can I ask you, are we recording right now?
Yeah, we're recording.
Are we on? Oh.
Yeah.
Are we live?
Yes, we're live,
we're
darling.
just talking about it.
We don't have to be, but yes.
No,
yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I just want to clarify so I didn't say anything,
But please say everything off record on the record.
I'll say everything.
It makes it better.
First of all, the name of this podcast makes me only want to ask you questions, not want to talk myself. So I will be doing available. More of that. I want to know. Okay, so what is sexuality, psychedelics? Tell me about this podcast and tell me what you're doing because I'm very curious. Okay. And when you say you're interested in psychedelics, are you doing psychedelics? Mm-hmm. Are you like, which ones are you doing and how heavy are they?
So I'm really basically not going to get to ask you any questions. I've been exploring psychedelics for my own sort of healing and understanding properly in a sort of focused way for about 7 years, starting with ayahuasca. And before that, I dabbled, recreationally. I was always curious. I loved to party. Also really sensitive. So I wasn't someone who could kind of bombard myself. So I had to sort of research and get a little bit like, conscious about what I was putting in my body, just because I, wasn't that hardy and I didn't want to kind of mess myself up too much. But yeah, I mean, in a more focused way, while I've been a therapist, I've had this sort of parallel path, which I guess you and I didn't talk about at the time and probably was only just starting then. And it also coincided with what I was learning from meditation and mindfulness very, very directly. But yeah, I mean, it's really been about exploring the mind, exploring the heart, getting more into the heart and out of the head. Psychology in general is quite head-based, what we're taught and how we're trained.
Right.
Yeah, and just opening into more and more possibilities. And that ties in with also the sort of sexual explorations and the psychics as well, because these are all ways to open the box, fire up the neural pathways in new ways and start to think and live differently, which I feel like it's time for.
I agree. It's interesting that you're doing that because it's so hot right now.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing it for a while, so I think that's sort of, it's just a piece of sort of lucky timing that finally what I'm interested in is sort of being seen to be potentially valuable.
Oh, well, you already are valuable.
Oh, thank you.
You've been seen that way for a long time by me. I just love it because, it used to be the psychedelics were so taboo, so crazy. You would take them and you'd be out of your mind. And psychedelics are different now.
So did you take them? Did you have the old school psychedelic experience? Tell me.
As a teenager, before they were being monitored, I did it the old school way.
What was that? Acid?
So I've definitely tried probably all of the above.
Oh, that's good to know. You see, I didn't know this because you present very straight, but I'm like, there must have been something that led her to meditation.
Yeah, I was pretty wild in my teenage years. But yeah, I mean, I pretty much, by the time I went to college, I stopped doing everything, not because I needed to. I was a experimenter, let's say. And I did find it very interesting. In fact, I will not stop thinking about a conversation that I had when I had tried hallucinogenics or psychedelics, as we now call them. But I did have a conversation with a tree. And I remember realizing that trees are totally alive and having this very deep conversation. And then after it, learning more about trees. And now there's a new book that came out called The Hidden Life of Trees. Have you heard of this book?
I have, and I'm very excited to read it. It sounds incredible.
And it's basically everything I learned from when I was on, psychedelics.
What were you on?
It was called mescaline at the time.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's
it's still around, but not as much, or it's not in the mainstream as much. But what a beautiful realization.
Yeah, I mean, and that was so interesting to now know that trees communicate with each other, they communicate with us, and we need to honor them.
100%. I agree. I feel like I could spend my many lifetimes worshiping trees. How do you see that moment connecting in with the meditation journey that you've been on and sharing meditation?
Well, I think when I was in my 20s or teens and 20s, I was very interested in all things spiritual. I was interested in trying everything. I wanted to learn and absorb, and I was fearless. And then
you're still fearless, Suze.
Thank you. And then I started working in the fashion industry, and I really didn't have time. I didn't have time to breathe. I didn't have time to be. I didn't have time to question anything other than, I was working for someone else, making sure that all of her needs were met and everybody else's needs were met. And I was never kind of tapping into my own. And then, in the midst of all of that, I remember my mother-in-law saying, you need to breathe. And because that went on well into my 40s. Just then you have a family, and then you're kind of giving out. And at the age of 40, in my 40s, my mother-in-law said, you really need to breathe. And that was when everything changed for me.
You just took in her advice, and it just was like the beautifully timed advice. It just went straight in.
It was one of those, she was a psychotherapist. I was having a moment. She taught me a 3-minute exercise that shifted me from really stressed to really calm.
Okay, teach us the exercise. Let's slow down. Let's do it.
It was basically breathing in for 4, holding for 4, exhaling for 4, holding for 4, slowing down the breath, and then visualizing my happy place, which was a beach and myself on the beach. And after I slowed down my breath and visualized my happy place, it was like putting myself back into my body, feeling fully embodied. And that 3 minutes was really powerful. And I wondered, why I hadn't heard about it before, why I hadn't done that before, and why everybody wasn't doing that. And it's so easy to never stop and breathe. It's so easy to just live in the to-do list. That was something that
it's addictive, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it's not even just addictive. It's like people don't know. They don't know how to be.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think we're all, I guess you could say, I mean, I think of it as sort of being, we're hooked on a certain way of thinking, hooked on a certain way of being, where, it's maybe sort of, one step less conscious than the idea of being addicted, but where it's like we're hooked up to just a sort of template. And there are all these other templates out there, but how do we unhook from that? And I think that, it sounds like this all came about in a really beautiful, organic way, and it's so lovely when that happens in connection and when you've got a guide there. And I do think that sometimes the kickoff of these journeys, and I think for me, although it's hard to place exactly where my journey started, it feels like it just goes back and back. But sometimes the kickoff of these journeys, like into the inner life, are quite scary. And I had a sort of remembrance of that. I was in England this summer, and it had been kind of go. I took a bunch of kids over there, and we had all the COVID tests and seeing all the family, and it's just been like that recently anyway, like a lot going on and kind of fun challenges. And I like being busy, and I like challenges and all of that kind of stuff. And I don't like sitting still for the most part and just closing my eyes. And when I have an excuse not to, I'll generally take it. So that's kind of how it's been. And then I, remembered, meditation's always a good idea. And I sat down and I closed my eyes, and I was doing it in a way where I sort of had these. And I think from psychedelics, I have quite a sort of spatial consciousness now. Like I can see things from a lot of different angles. And so I can kind of watch myself more as I'm doing something. So even though I'm having an unpleasant experience, I'm also like, oh, this is so interesting that I'm having this unpleasant experience. And why is that? And blah, blah, blah. So I was sitting there, and I was just sort of slowing down that moment of turning from the outside plane to like all this stuff that needs doing and problems that need fixing and all the visual stimulation that's out there, and just shutting that down, like closing that act of closing the eyes and kind of saying no to a minute to all of that stimulation. It's so, it presents with such urgency. It all has to be done, and you have to do it. You're the one. and then the sort of the like, it's kind of like a mini ego death, right? Closing your eyes. You're like, it's over. Well, I'm saying, that's over. Oh gosh. And now what am I going to have to look at? Oh, probably quite a few things that I wasn't like super crazy to look at from the beginning, this thing I'm feeling uneasy about, all the sort of existential stuff, all the unknowns, all the rattling around the mind. Like there's a lot there, there can be, until you find those lovely empty spaces, there can be a lot to contend with. So really what I've been thinking about since that moment is the bravery of meditation. I don't know if that resonates with you, but.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, it's just something that is now as common as brushing my teeth. When I wake up, the first thing I do every single morning now is I open up the Unplug app. I look at the positive quote of the day. I do a 10-minute meditation, and then I start my day. I shut down my phone, and I start my day. And I do that every single day. So no matter what happens, I will have started my day for sure positive. And I will have taken a moment to not only kind of get surprised on what, like with this app, I'm kind of like getting a different teacher every single day. So it's different every single day. But I also choose how I want to be and show up.
Yeah.
And I set an intention for not being a stress ball, not being a crazy person, not being someone who's rushing everybody or making people not feel, because my default is someone who moves really quickly. My default is not technically caring who I'm knocking down to get to my goal. It's just like, I want to get to the goal and I don't look to the right or the left.
Yeah.
I actually consciously choose to get off of autopilot every single morning. Because when we're functioning in autopilot and our subconscious, mind is taking over, we don't even know what's going on. We're doing a lot of things poorly.
No question about it. Yeah.
But when we actually stop to be conscious and present, it's like a power.
Well, it strikes me you have different types of power and you found a way to bring them together, which is extra powerful. It's a win-win-win because you've got this kind of, and I imagine upbringing has quite a bit to do with it as well, but you have this sort of very hardworking and very sort of athletic approach to life, as I've observed. And yeah, I mean, there's confidence and there's capability and there's the upbringing and there's the mindset. I mean, I feel like, you really seem to embrace the idea that you're here to work and here to grow things and here to make change. And for a lot of people, like they can't get to that level,
Well, I think for me, I don't see the problem. I see the challenge. So a lot of people, I think, look at all the problems that come their way and they just get overwhelmed and they kind of shrink and wither. But I'm faced with problems on an hourly basis.
Sure.
So like for me, I've been trained to look at the problems like challenges. And that happened from a couple jobs that I had. So that I think who you work for in the beginning, in the early days, really does make a difference. I was trained by taskmasters and they didn't want to hear the word no, and they didn't believe in it. And if they wanted it, it was my job to make it happen. And that was some people would say, oh, that's very Devil Wears Prada. Or, yes, it was that.
It does sound like exactly like that.
Well, that was my life. But the truth is that was amazing because I was able to achieve things because I never saw them as problems. I saw them as challenges. And I didn't think things were impossible. I thought it was possible.
Right. But maybe this is just the reality you created because as a soul, you're just, an unstoppable force.
Well, I also think it's also work ethic. Like, I don't know if you saw this new movie that's out called The Donut King.
No.
Have you seen that movie? It's fantastic. It's a documentary about a Cambodian refugee who comes over to the United States and has absolutely nothing and decides to open up a donut shop and in effect ends up helping a bunch of Cambodian refugees open up donut shops. And now in Los Angeles, 95% of the donut shops are owned by Cambodians. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
So I think who trains you in the very beginning has a definite impact. I believe in nature and I believe in nurture.
So what about late life training? Give us some hope.
Well, I mean, who would have thought I would have ever stopped in my mid-40s and decide to open up a brick
Darling,
and mortar?
I hate to share this with you, but you haven't stopped. You've been creating a global franchise. Sorry to myth bust.
Well, I mean, shifted.
Okay, no, I
shifted. Let's say that.
Yeah.
I shifted and started working even harder on this business than the one before. But I feel just as passionate. And I think that's a thing when you see something that causes passion inside of you, or you feel enthusiasm or inner enthusiasm. I think, like you were saying, this podcast for you, you're enthusiastic about it. Yeah. You are into psychedelics, you're into sexuality, you're into it. And you're doing this and you're sharing it. And it's a passion, and nobody's holding you accountable but you.
That's right. I think when you come from passion, it has a life of its own. I haven't had to think about this podcast really at all. Do you know what I mean? I just had the idea talking to a friend like, oh, that would be fun. And I always think that like, oh, that would be fun, or just for fun. Like, these are the magic words. You know, years ago, my friend Lucy invited me to a psychedelics conference in Oakland. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? They've got a psychedelics conference. That sounds like so much fun. I mean, it's going to get in the way of my work a bit, but I'm going to clear aside my work and I'll go and do this thing for fun. And it's just had a life of its own. And I think that I always find that really beautiful. And one of the things I enjoy about my work, or I've really enjoyed, is like helping people connect back to passion, sort of find their dreams again. Because I do feel later in life, it's super easy to get buried, and not all of us have these kind of clear-eyed, mentors or beautiful moments of elucidation, or sometimes you get them, but you get them rather late, so how can we kind of encourage this in ourselves? And I think sort of back to meditation, it can be confronting in the way of, oh shit, I've got this, mind that won't stop racing, or I've got these parts of myself that I'd rather not look at. But then there's this whole like embarrassment of riches as well, of like, kind of remembering your body, remembering like the sweetness of your breath, and remembering how cool it is to make a new connection inside yourself, or, a memory coming in. Maybe it's something that happened the day before. Maybe it was you were laughing with someone, or you made a new connection. And it's sort of this, I think, it's this process of sort of distillation where you get to know yourself more, you remember yourself more, you remember not just what life has served you and we're all doing our best, for God's sake, the best that you've made of it, but you remember that it's like your essential juices, your essences, the stuff that really makes you and makes you sing. So I do think that there's I guess these are the big incentives to me for sort of, all this kind of healing work, this going inside. It's about kind of reconnecting to the original juice.
Well, I think when you are pausing yourself, or you're guided, especially with guided visualization, which I absolutely love.
Agreed. Yeah.
That is my drug.
Yeah. Yeah.
Guided visualization by a pro is my drug. So I have people who have guided me to see my future self, where I literally am seeing Susie 10 years down the road.
Yeah, I love that.
And then she's giving me advice on how we got to where we are 10 years from now. I've done meditations where I've seen my past life. I've done meditations where I see my ideal life on a movie screen. And I was very surprised by what I've seen.
What was really surprising?
I've seen my future self 10 times, and it's always been different.
Maybe you proliferate in the future. Maybe there are 10 Susies.
So it's...
Or maybe like, there's a different version in each.
Sliding doors.
Yeah.
So it's really, it's super cool, because when you take the time to just be and visualize and give yourself some space, that's when all the big ideas happen. So when you say finding your passion, the best place to find your passion is to unplug from your phone, unplug from your devices, unplug from all your distractions, and just get still and silent and notice what pops up.
Absolutely. You know, as you're speaking, I'm remembering a guided visualization I did. It was a guided sort of imagination exercise. We were planting seeds. It was in springtime. This lovely Irish guy, I can't remember his name.
Johnny O'Callahan.
That's right. And it was just beautiful. And I was planting seeds that and I don't know how many years ago that was, but, you know, I think about that meditation from time to time, because I'm like, oh yeah, that was that seed and this was this seed, and it's completely coherent. And bizarrely I found coherence from psychedelics, and I've also found coherence from, yes, deep guided meditations, sound meditations, and body scans. I mean, I still do that. It's funny, you know, it was the one that I taught at Unplug, and I kept thinking like, why did I do body scan? Why body scan?
It's the best.
And now I sort of understand it more. I'm like, yeah, body scan is amazing, and it's what I need. You know, you teach what you need to learn, like you said. You know, you're doing this. My tendency is to disassociate, because I've got a big excited mind, and I go out of body, and body's where the pain is and the difficulty is, and so yeah, you know, broadly speaking, my journey is embodiment. You know, coming back inside the body, and so yeah. When I meditate now, I pretty much always go to body scan. I mean, just like receive it. I absolutely love it. And so, yeah, thank you for giving me my start in body scan.
Have you ever meditated to your own body scan on the Unplug app where you're guiding you?
Whoa. Do I have a body scan on the app?
You do.
I do? Oh,
yes.
God, that's a very, gosh, I mean... Is that narcissistic?
No.
It's a very LA thing to do. I'm just going to like meditate to myself. Meditating is so
meditating to yourself. A lot of our teachers like don't want to do it because they just can't imagine doing it. Yeah. But it's almost like you are telling yourself exactly what you need to hear. And it's maybe the most perfect meditation ever when you meditate to yourself, because it's you telling you what you wish somebody would tell you.
Oh my God, I love this. It's so good. It ties in with what I think about a lot, which is, you know, how do we talk to ourselves, and slowing down enough to catch, you know, how we talk to ourselves. Like, well, I'll just talk about myself. You know, as I started to become more aware of this, first of all, that I do talk to myself internally, and then how it is, as I started to wake up to that, I could see I was often not speaking in the kindest way. It wasn't horrible, but it was impatient, and it was results oriented, and it was a bit like, you know, there was whip in there. There was like, come on, you know? So as I woke up to that, I was like, oh, wow, I've got a journey here to be more kind, you know, in the way that I talk to myself, and slower, more encouraging, and more allowing yourself to be where you're at and not pushing. So, yes, and then of course, as a therapist, I've noticed that, you know, people carry their own medicine. The job of being a good therapist is the job of being a facilitator and helping people connect the dots internally to see that they are wise, and they do carry wisdom, and they do have all the answers, you know, and they're the greatest. Like, we're all the greatest, you know. Hard to realize on a one-on-one level, but yeah, I think this really resonates, and I'm so glad that you brought that up, and I'm definitely gonna do it, and I'll let you know how much squirminess there is, or if I'm evolved enough to just simply receive.
I think you're gonna absolutely love it. And I have to say that you will never have a conversation with any other human being in the amount of time that you had with yourself. So you will talk to yourself more in this lifetime than you'll ever talk to anybody else. And you need to make sure that inner conversation is in the best kind of service to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've heard of this expression. It's a psych expression, and I'm not a psychiatrist, but ants. Do you know what ants are?
No.
It's, oh my gosh, now I'm forgetting it. It's some automatic negative talk.
Okay. Like automatic like negative self-talk, but that wouldn't quite work.
Yes.
Talk to self or something like that. Yeah.
It's something like that. It's something like basically the automatic things that we negatively say to ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like the internalization of the worst sort of parenting you received.
We want to squash the ants.
I like ants. I like ants. So I would just like redirect them to work on a really good project, you know.
You like automatically?
No, I just like that. I just like all creatures. I don't want to squash creatures.
No,
I'm a Buddhist, essentially.
Automatic.
I know. I'm just saying I wouldn't want to squash an insect, so I would just, I would like shoo the ants away, or I would redirect the ants, or I would, you know, I would like the ants to transform. Yeah.
I have no issue with.
You have no issue with squashing ants.
The inner ants.
Oh dear. Oh, the inner ants. All right, Susie. Fine. I forgot what a repository of wisdom you are. I mean, of course you are, but you know, it's nice to sit with that. Tell me, what do you think about this mental health crisis? Where should we put our energy? Where do you think the leading edge is? Do you think it's this visualization stuff? What should we do as a people?
I actually think it's a trifecta.
Okay.
I think we need more sleep.
Mm-hmm.
People aren't sleeping. And they're not sleeping because they are looking at their cell phones right before they go to bed. And it is messing with their brains and it's messing with their sleep. So I think, one, we need to unplug from technology a little bit earlier than we are doing. So making an unplug time and putting it on our schedule.
Yeah.
And then actually having a night and time for ourselves to be free of other people's ideas, other people's stuff.
Yeah.
So we need to cleanse the palate at the end of the evening. So I think that's like a very important factor. I think people have never been more connected and never felt more isolated than they do right now.
True.
And I think part of that is because they don't want to be with themselves. So how can they actually want to be with other people or expect other people to want to be with them?
Right, exactly.
Right?
Yes.
So I think taking some time to befriend yourself is really important.
Yes.
So that, you know, you cleanse your energy because secondhand stress is real.
Yeah.
We walk into a room when we're stressed out, we stress out the entire room. Other people walk into the room stressed, they can stress us out. So I think there's a lot of things about, you know, protecting your energy. But what's the energy that you're sending out? People don't question that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we need to learn how absolutely interconnected we are, and then, you know, learn to play that instrument, which we somehow over centuries forgot to play. Maybe the world just got so big.
Wait, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I want to know about psychedelics because you're saying, you know, when I think about them, obviously I think about the psychedelics in the 80s, not in the 2020s. And they're very different now than they were then. And, you know, you're a mom. And so being completely disconnected to the world around you when you're on psychedelics, which is kind of what happens. You're connected to the world, but you're not like, you can't be responsible for anybody else when you're doing them. But how do you know you're not going to like damage your brain? How do you know? I want to kind of like understand that a little bit more. And how safe are they right now? And when you do them, are you with someone who's monitoring you?
Yeah.
Are you doing it on your own?
I mean, you can, you know, they are the same substance. I mean, there are more sophisticated blends, but they are basically the same substances that were around in the 80s. I mean, we have more, you know, ayahuasca and more iboga. We have more kind of access to indigenous plant medicines, but you know, acid's been around for a long time. MDMA's been around for a long time. Mushrooms have been around for a long time. Cannabis has been around for a long time. So what's been changing is our understanding of how to, our knowledge of the brain and how it works, and our understanding of how to kind of optimize our experiences on a therapeutic level with these things. I mean, people are still still having fun with them. That's not going to change. And also I do think that we underestimate the therapeutic power of fun. Fun is one of the more therapeutic experiences we can actually have in our life. It can be a total game changer. I mean, we were talking about that a bit earlier, the just for fun thing. But yeah, you know, the set and setting is the sort of, that's the mantra of psychedelic psychotherapy. It's all about setting up the intention, setting up the space, setting up the safety, working with a guide until you feel like I'm at the stage I can do it by myself. And although sometimes it's good to have a guide because you can get, you know, feedback and you can get support and all of that kind of good stuff. But yeah, you know, taking psychedelics is going to make you, you know, it's your mind becomes a tree, you know, you those branches just branch out. And it's, you know, I think for you it would be very like, you know, now especially that you've done so much meditating, I think it would be probably a very wonderful experience, very satisfying, and, you know, dots would be connecting and you would be seeing things, and you know, you would be less scared afterwards, because that's just how it is. It's sort of like any adventure, you know. I mean, that's sort of my version of bungee jumping. I don't do it, you know, on the external plane, but I like taking dives on the internal plane. And over time, as I've taken more and more dives, I've found more and more safety. And that goes to my sort of experience as someone who's felt rather out of body, rather disassociated, often in kind of existential crisis. Why am I here? Feeling like a bit of an alien. And as I've sort of taken these journeys, I've connected more to my heart, more to my body, more to my humanness, more to the beauty of my own imagination. So that's just something I can I remain in such kind of ongoing gratitude for, like, wow, I have this mind, I have this imagination, I can travel to all of these places, I can connect these dots for myself, for other people. You know, I think I've really always been a creative person who hasn't really understood my creativity. And now I'm like really waking up to it kind of more and more and more and more. And the fact that I'm creative because we're all creative, because we are creative beings, because wherever we put our mind, we do manifest. Where we think we manifest, and we just manifest all over we can't help it, you know? And so to become more joyful about that, to become appreciative of that, to become intentional about that. You know, I think that psychedelics just contribute to that. I haven't seen people damaged by them in their mind. I do think some people have minds that unfortunately are quite damaged, and pouring psychedelics on top of that particular situation is like, you know, maybe pouring a little gasoline on the fire, just gives a little flare up to all of the crazy. But I don't know, my journey with them is actually weirdly is I feel like it's almost like I've proven my own sanity. I'm like, oh, I can go on a wild ride, but I can come back. It's okay. And then you have to ask, you know, where am I coming back to? Because is there a there, you know? Like, well, I'm just coming back to, I don't know, the idea of being Jane and kind of figuring it out as I go along. So, yeah, I think, you know, there's this idea of surrender. And I think that psychedelics help with that. Just the sort of surrendering to the more like the I don't know, and I'm not going to figure it all out. And there isn't a there. But we are on a magical ride, and we can create a lot along the way and move into greater and greater connection. And I mean, that's what I'm really interested in, you know, is sort of moving through those. What are our barriers to connection internally and externally? How can we all become trees, you know, how can we realize that we are trees? You know, so I don't know if that helps you. I haven't given you any hard science, and
no, I find
I can hook you up with that, but
do you facilitate that? Are you also kind of like having some of your clients, are you monitoring them, or like?
So I can't legally do that under my therapist license, or even, you know, without a therapist license, although it's changing now. So for me, you know, my decision right now is to keep my license, and so I can help people with sort of more the before and the after and the curation, and help people figure out, is it a good idea for them to be taking psychedelics. And if they've decided to go on a journey already independently of me, then I can help them get their intentions together, or support them on the other side by doing some EMDR and be doing some sort of integration work.
What is EMDR?
EMDR is eye movement desensitization reprocessing. It's tapping. You know about tapping, I think.
Yes.
Don't you? Or not?
I do.
So it's a kind of tapping. It's traditionally done with buzzers, but since COVID, it's moved online. So to self-tapping, and it's literally just bilateral. It's left, right, left, right, left, right. And my training is in an attachment-focused EMDR. So you've already got to be a therapist. It's kind of like an add-on. And you're going into deep traumatic spaces with the client. You're going back into their past, to the horrible stuff that happened, but you're creating a safe container. You're creating a really strong relationship, and you're doing something that's called resourcing, which I think we could probably move into groups at some point if you're interested. I think it could be a really cool thing to do. Resourcing is, it's adding your own medicine. It's resourcing on your own medicine that already exists. So, I can say to you, Susie, tell me about 2 incredibly nourishing, supportive people in your life, and you might say to me, my mother-in-law and my best friend, right? And we would take each of those one at a time, and I'd say, Susie, close your eyes and bring in the feeling of, say your mother-in-law, and feel her wisdom and feel that nourishment, and just want you to breathe, and you're going to tap that into your body until it feels really good and strong. And then you'll go, okay, I got it. And then we'll do that with someone else, right? You can do it with imaginary figures. You can do it with place. So it's resourcing. And so that's great for, people can self-tap on resources in a safe way. You don't want to self-tap on trauma unless you're like super duper advanced pro. But you can self-tap on resources. And as a practitioner, then when your client starts going into the kind of intense territory that revisiting trauma is, you can say, okay, just now we're going to just add this resource. So you bring some calm into the nervous system, and you're starting to, get this experience of, oh, yeah, if I can put my imagination here and I can put my imagination here, if I can be in this terrible thing that happened, but then I can also feel this wash of calm coming into my nervous system, or I can hold the hand of my best friend while I'm there. I could just bring my best friend into the room to witness the scene and be on my side or whatever. It's a beautiful thing to observe, because it's a game changer, because you can repair what happened with what you believe about yourself because of what happened. Because a lot of people, they experience something bad and then they turn it into a bad thing about them. I was raped and I'm a bad person, or I'm irresponsible, or I should have known better, something like that, back to the automatic negative self-talk. And you can lift that off. You can bring awareness to that. And you're like, oh, what if you had another belief about yourself? What if it's, oh, I'm a survivor, or I'm strong? Okay, great. We'll tap that in. So it's really lovely. And it's a great way to put the past in the past, and remember that you can kind of create your state, that we're creators.
Wow. That is very cool. I miss having you around.
I miss you too. So, we should definitely do something. I feel something's on the horizon.
I'm going to make it happen.
Yeah, you will.
And the studio is open. We are live with masks, and we're hybrid classes right now. So
are the teachers wearing masks?
The teachers wear masks inside the studio. And then when they sit on the stage, we have the chairs 6 feet away, and then they have a camera in front of them. So they're teaching both to the people inside the room and to all the people all over the world. It's really amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're so busy, but let's talk about sexuality and psychedelics. I bet you people would love that.
Yeah, baby.
Oh, you know what?
It's the Brentwood crowd. Do you think they would come?
The thing is, we see people, and this is like my biggest takeaway from working at Unplug.
Okay.
We see people on the surface, just like you thought I was straight-laced.
Yeah.
You have no idea.
And I like
but
this.
We see
this means we can be real friends.
Yeah, we can see people on the surface and we think that they're a certain way. But then when we get to know them and we take the time to actually say, you know, who are you? Yeah, I used to love doing that when I would sit in the lobby at Unplug and I would just look at a stranger and be like, what's your scoop? Who are you? And they would tell me these stories that would blow my mind. And they would be human beings that would be trapped in a conservative looking, you know, body. And everybody has a story. Everybody is unique. When you open up the door to actually ask them about it, it usually will surprise you in a positive way.
I totally agree. We just don't take the time, right? It's a stranger on the train phenomenon. It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Suze, I love you. Thank you.
I love you too. Thank you.